And so I'm the tourism sector manager with Skills Development Scotland, and I think there are a couple of my colleagues on the call, which is great to see. So Paul and Sharita, thank you for joining. So they can keep me right as well. And if I go off message or start talking nonsense, they can feel free to chip in, guys, as well. So tourism sector manager, which really involves me working with the sector nationally, but also locally, listening to the industry, identifying what the challenges are, which are many, obviously, that the industry is facing, and particularly around skills, training, workforce development, attracting talent, etc. I've also been part of the STIRG for the last 2 years, which sounds like an evil Bond organisation. I'm sure you heard of it, but it's actually the Scottish Tourism Emergency Response Group. So that's been sort of looking at what we can do along with the Scottish Government and other agencies. And I've joined the industry leadership group, which has just been reconvened to replace the STIRG as well. And I'm also on the tourism skills group, which I'll talk a little bit about as well. So so that's who I am. What I'm going to cover really is a lot of it you'll already know. You're living it, many of you. The challenges and the current state of the sector. A little bit of data. I don't want to overload you with data, but just to sort of illustrate what we know about the sector and the workforce at the moment in Scotland, and where I can in the Highlands. Well, I'll drill down the skills challenges that the sector is facing, but also the support that's available, that's out there, which again you may be aware of. You may be aware of some of it, but a lot of businesses tell me is it's very confusing, and so it's good to sort of get an overview of what support is available. So I hope that's going to be useful, and that's what you're looking for. And at the end of it, as I also said, it'd be good to get discussion, listen, about your experiences, what you see as the key challenges for you and your business and your destination. It's really good to hear that stuff. I'm not going to assume everybody knows who Skills Development Scotland are. We're Scotland's national skills body. Our role is to support Scotland's economic growth of all sectors, and to support people, everybody in Scotland, and businesses to develop and apply their skills. So it's the best summary I can give. So we provide a lot of careers information, advice and guidance in schools and post school, and I'm part of the team that works with businesses and support businesses where we can. We've got about 1,600 staff across Scotland, and I think it's about 40 career centres. So that's probably enough about who we are. So we produce pretty regularly an economic, what we call an economy, people and skills report. I put a link on here, so you can go to it. It's on our corporate website, and there'll be no surprises in any of these sort of high level economic wide messages. The economic outlook for Scotland is stark, and for the UK and beyond. High inflation, cost of living crisis, fiscal upheaval is creating a lot of uncertainty and financial challenges for individuals and businesses. And forecasts estimate that GDP in the UK will contract in 2023. In other words, a recession. And it's going to continue to contract in the rest of this year. So we know all this. In terms of employment and participation rates, which is the number of people available to work, we have seen some positive movement in the last couple of months. It was very low leading up to August, but started to pick up a little bit. But we can't assume that that's going to continue over the coming months. There's a lot of uncertainty, and we might see changes to that situation. Scottish firms are feeling the impact of the downturn, and business confidence is at an all-time, well, 28-month low, really, so pre-COVID. I'll come back to labour shortages. We all know there are labour shortages and challenges for employers, but that is a major issue, of course, right across the economy. So it's not just tourism and hospitality. It's being felt right across the economy. And COVID, of course, hit the economy very hard, and tourism and hospitality in particular. So yeah, a bleak. I thought I'd start off with a really bleak summary, but we all know that. We all watch the news. So pretty difficult. In terms of tourism and hospitality specifically, I mentioned labour shortages, and a combination of factors, I guess. It's not just been COVID. We've also seen the impact of Brexit. There have also been things like the Great Resignation, which is a phrase we've heard a lot, which is really people making a decision to step away from the careers they've had. And again, it's across the economy, but certainly been a factor in tourism and hospitality. And of course, you're not then just losing people, you're losing skills, experience, expertise as well. So that's also having an impact. In terms of Brexit, about 29% of businesses are reporting a really noticeable decline in EU workers. I reckon it's actually higher than that, but the official sort of figures that you get from surveys say about 29-30%. We do know that back in 2016, so well pre-Brexit, about 12% of the workforce were EU migrants across Scotland, higher in rural areas, but across the whole tourism sector, about 12%, higher in accommodation and food than in other parts of the sector, but still about 12%. Now it's around about 7.5%. So, you know, the stats bear it out. There's been a big reduction in the number of EU migrants working in the sector. And about 46% of businesses are experiencing difficulties in recruiting in the sector. Again, could be higher in some areas than others. The main reasons given are low numbers of applicants, so just people not coming forward in the way that they did, not being suitable. Those that do come forward not necessarily having the right skills or qualifications that businesses need, and the lack of EU workers also are the main reasons that businesses cite for the challenges that they face. And between January and September, we captured that there were around about 29,700 job postings for hospitality and tourism. So these are online job postings. And overall, about 55% of businesses say that, you know, they're struggling with staff shortages. Interestingly, of those job vacancies, the main skills that people are businesses are looking for. I was going to do this as a quiz, but I won't put you on the spot. The top skill they're looking for is cooking. The second is cleaning. The third is team working, and the fourth is customer service. So those are the main skills that businesses are citing in job adverts, which I always find interesting to see that. The workforce in Scotland now is 182,400. So I wouldn't swear to it. It might be a bit below, but round about 182,400. So between 2019 and 2020, not surprisingly, we've seen a pretty big decrease, about 15%. Primarily, I think, you know, don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to say, because of the impact of COVID and business closures and so on and so forth. Estimate in that workforce, we know that the majority, there's actually a majority of women, about 55% women work in the sector. It's one of the few sectors which has more women than men. It also does well in terms of being quite a diverse workforce. So good percentage of people with disabilities, above the national average for other sectors, people from ethnic minorities, and of course young people. And about a third of the workforce are under 24 in age. So it is quite a young workforce, and that's something I'll come back to just in a wee while to talk about some of the challenges around that. And about half the workforce are part-time, so a high percentage of workers in the sector are part-time. But you'll be aware of this sort of thing. Interestingly, in terms of future projections, just to give an idea of the challenge, between now and 2025, so the next 3 years, estimate the industry is going to need to find around about, in Scotland, is going to need to find around about 42,700 people. So that's to replace those that are leaving and also to take into account anticipated growth. So growth's not going to be huge, but there is anticipated growth in the sector in the coming years. So that gives you a flavour of the challenge in terms of finding staff. In terms of some of the other key issues, increasing cost of doing business is a huge issue. So energy costs, staffing costs as well, creating challenges. We have seen increases in staff pay, depending where you are, around about 7% increases across the board in salaries, and of course that's putting additional pressures on businesses, with staff often being the major costs that they face. And as a result, many businesses are considering closures over the winter, potentially making redundancies or reducing services. I mean, of course, many already are reducing services in terms of the days that they're opening or the range of services that they're providing because of rising costs and staffing challenges. I thought I'd highlight, I'll be talking a little bit about Fair Work and within the sector, but about 32.3% of staff in the sector earn the living wage or more, which is way below the national average, which is around about 80%. So Fair Work is a big issue in the sector at the moment. It's been talked about a lot nationally, and the Fair Work Convention, which is sort of the Scottish Government branch organisation that is promoting fair work and monitoring fair work in Scotland, is currently undertaking an inquiry into fair work in the hospitality sector, not tourism more widely, very specifically hospitality, to look at what the issues and challenges are and to make recommendations. It's set to run through to 2024, so it's quite a long running program. I'll maybe come back to that briefly. There is a new tourism and hospitality industry leadership group that's just been established. It met for the first time this week and chaired by Ivan McKee, the Minister, which is good. It's the first time an industry leadership group in this sector has had a ministerial chair, which is, I think, really positive, because it means he's really hearing firsthand the challenges the sector's facing. And it's also co-chaired by Mark Crothall from Scottish Tourism Alliance, so I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And that industry leadership group is going to focus on driving forward the National Tourism Strategy Outlook Scotland 2030. So taking over from the STIRG and really trying to look forward to 2030 and what the industry, try to get the industry back on track in terms of priorities. And skills and the workforce and people are a key part of that strategy as well. Other key focuses, I'm sure, for you as well, are of course net zero and achieving net zero, and for businesses, what they can do, what needs to be done to achieve net zero, and what are the skills attached to that, and of course digital technology as well. Digital now is a huge issue across the economy, upskilling around digital skills, but particularly in tourism and hospitality with the rise of online booking and social media, data analytics, all of these things. It's the skills that we need to address these. And I think it's worth saying as well that we know that staff in the sector, those staff that are working in the sector, are under increasing pressure, with its mental health and well-being issues. I think in a survey that I saw, 81%, I think it was UK Hospitality, 81% of hospitality businesses say that they're asking their staff to work increasing hours because of staff shortages, and inevitably, that is putting pressure on staff. And we also hear stories of customers being less tolerant and less patient with staff, and so on and so forth. So I think it's worth acknowledging that it's also an issue for the sector, how to support staff around mental health and well-being, and managers and business owners as well in these tough times. I mentioned data. I don't want to bombard you with data. So we do have a tourism sector skills assessment on our website, and there's the link there where we try to capture national data about the sector. And there's a lot of data on there. I just picked out a few things. I've already covered the workforce numbers. So 7% of the national workforce, Scottish national workforce, are in tourism. So it's an important, very significant sector, and it's right across Scotland. It's not just in Edinburgh or Glasgow. Highlands is the third biggest employer region in Scotland, but tourism is important everywhere. Every local authority area has tourism as an important sector. So it's absolutely crucial, and people like the Scottish Tourism Alliance and others, I think do a great job just reminding government of that. And as I said, up to COVID, from 2012 to 2019, the workforce in Scotland actually increased by 25% as the industry grew. A really positive success story, but it has declined over the last 2 years. But we do anticipate growth again. I mentioned the living wage. I'll come on to apprenticeships very briefly, but it's a big employer of apprenticeships. It's a big adopter of apprenticeships, about 2,000 apprentices in training in 2022. And if you're interested, from the data we gather, the current median real-time advertised salary for job adverts for jobs in the sector is 21,600, which has increased, as I said, over the last year or so, for obvious reasons. We also have a Highlands and Islands skills assessment, regional skills assessment, which you're welcome to go in and look at online. So we do know that in the Highland region, 22,700 people are employed in tourism, significant. And anticipating when I talked about those future jobs, in the midterm, about 4,300 jobs are going to be need to be filled, and in the longer term, about 8,500 up to 2032. And of the job postings in Highland, those were the key job areas that businesses were looking for: kitchen assistants, receptionists, and chefs, which probably won't surprise you. Although I was surprised housekeepers weren't there, but interesting in views. There were quite a lot of housekeepers needed. How am I doing for time? I'm just, oh, blimey, time flies when you do these things, doesn't it? It's like a different multiverse. Okay, what are the key skills challenges the sector faces? I don't think there'll be any surprises here. I've tried to simplify it in a creative graphic as best I can do, creatively. So labour recruitment and retention is a massive challenge. That kind of links to fair work. I think those the two sides of a coin, and challenging negative perceptions of the sector is something we're very aware of, and the industry is very aware of, that the industry still struggles, particularly with young people and their influencers, parents. There are those that perhaps have an outdated view of tourism and hospitality as a career. Think of it as low pay, antisocial hours, long hours, limited career opportunities. There's a lack of awareness of the range of jobs and careers that are in the sector. Everything from not just what the obvious ones that if you go into a school and talk to young people, they say, yeah, chef, waiter, maybe a hotel manager. But there's the whole visitor attraction sector, tour section, marine tourism, adventure tourism, you can be an accountant in the sector, you could be an HR professional in the sector, you could be a facilities manager in the sector, etc. So lack of awareness of that, and the positive stories, the fun, the excitement of the sector, and the rapid progression that people who very often don't have formal qualifications but have the right attitude can progress. So a recognition we need to get those address a lot of those negative perceptions. And there are things happening I'll come on to later, campaigns and so on to try and do that. But that certainly is a priority. Fair work I've mentioned, and it's not just about pay. There are 5 principles of fair work under the sort of formal definition as effective voice. So employees having a voice in the workplace, opportunities, being able to progress and train and develop, security, which covers pay, but also secure contracts, fulfillment and respect. So feeling valued. A lot of those, there's great practice in the sector, but again, we tend to hear the negative stories, and so it's also about promoting these principles and supporting employers to see what they can do more around fair work, but also telling the positive stories and positive experiences of people who work in the sector. But that is a challenge, and it's a priority for the sector, because obviously the more appealing the work environment is or perceived as, then that will help attract more people into the sector. Automation, digitalization is a huge issue. A lot of stuff out there, a lot of stuff around workforce as well, a lot of technology tools that could be used, but it's about again raising awareness of those and training and supporting people to use them. We worked with an organisation called Travel Tech for Scotland. I don't think I've included them on the information later on, but they did a great piece of research into digital tech that the sector can use specifically around workforce to help them manage, motivate, and retain staff. And there's a lot of good tech stuff out there, and they've sort of got a website that promotes this stuff. So well worth having a look at that. Net zero and the skills around that, really important. We were able to work with Keep Scotland Beautiful and Green Tourism earlier this year to deliver some online training around this, but we need to do a lot more. And again, there is support out there, which I'll come back to, but for businesses, it's increasingly important as a business to be seen as sustainable and green, but it's also obviously crucial in terms of the role the sector has to achieve the 2045 target of Scotland to be a net zero country. And finally, equity and diversity. We know that the industry has a very diverse workforce, but what can it do to do more? Still tends to, we still very often focus on young people, which is fine, which is good, but what about older people? A lot of older people don't necessarily see tourism and hospitality as a career, but they've got the skills, they've got the experience, and perhaps from a previous career, people who have retired to work in the sector. And the industry is not always targeting or looking at how they can be more age inclusive. So we're working with Age Scotland at the moment, and I shall make sure you're linked into the information that's going to be coming out shortly around that, around training for businesses, around what they can do to attract and retain older workers, and also what they can do to become more age inclusive for customers as well. Age Scotland do some really have some really good resources and training around that. Also, people with disabilities, we work with Inclusion Scotland, and similarly, Inclusion Scotland have some great information for businesses around employing and supporting people with disabilities in the workplace. So I think recognising the industry perhaps can't be as dependent as it has been on young people going forward. There are fewer and fewer young people, and all the sectors are fighting over a shrinking pool in a sense. So looking at the wider labour market, I think, is something the industry needs to do. Very quickly, a few additional skills challenges. Again, no surprises for you. Chef shortages. I was saying earlier, I used to run hotels, small hotels. back in the 90s, and I always struggled to get chefs then. So it's not new, but is a particular challenge at the moment. A lot of chefs I know have changed career or stepped back from the career, and so attracting and retaining chefs is a major challenge for the sector. An interesting side effect of Brexit, with fewer European migrant workers in particular, that I'm hearing more about is language skills in the workplace, in terms of engaging with customers from overseas, and also just cultural awareness, understanding that with fewer migrant workers, that's actually become a skills gap, that we need to look at. Are there ways we can fill that? I don't need to tell you about rural challenges, and accommodation, particularly for staff, is a major challenge. And at the ILG this week, a lot of talk about changing planning laws to encourage and support those businesses that want to build accommodation or convert into accommodation for staff to help address the challenges, but also transport, staff being able to get to work, particularly in the hours that the industry needs, are challenges for the sector. I've mentioned attractiveness of the sector, and promoting the quality and diversity of careers in the sector is important. I think as a sector as well, the number of small businesses in the sector, the large guys, the McDonald hotels, the IHGs, the Creera hotels and so on, they have HR teams who can access support and funding and so on and so forth. Much harder for smaller businesses to be able to navigate the skills system. So that's a challenge as well for small businesses around skills. How can they get support and help to train their staff? And upskilling in general, that the world of work is changing across the economy, but particularly in hospitality and tourism. I know that more businesses look for their staff to be multi-skilled, to be able to work in different departments, and so that brings challenges around upskilling staff, giving them the skills and the confidence to work in a range of different environments. So a lot of challenges facing the sector, of course. I mentioned Outlook Scotland 2030. If you're not familiar, I'm sure you are, with the strategy, it's worth looking at on the Scottish Tourism Alliance website. It is the strategy for the sector nationally. And there is a section on the workforce called Our Passionate People, which kind of mirrors some of the things I talked about. I think it has a big emphasis on promoting, on attracting people into the sector, fair work, training, development, and career mobility, promoting training and development and opportunity for people in the sector, and diversity across the sector. So the industry itself that developed the strategy has recognised these as important priorities. So what support is available? So I just wanted to very quickly highlight some of the support that is out there from SDS and beyond. So we have a website, it's the first thing to say, and would recommend that as a port of call, really to look at what support is available. Our skillsforce.co.uk. It's been evolved and simplified, and I think is pretty good in terms of outlining support that is available, and it includes a self-diagnostic tool for those that want to sort of see what are the issues for themselves as a business. But we also have an employer helpline for people who want to just, if you're not sure what support is there and what help you need, there is somebody there that can talk you through that. We have support for small businesses, Skills for Growth program, which is dedicated one-to-one support. So where you can sit down with somebody, takes a bit of time obviously to sit down, talk through what the aspirations are for your business, and what are the skills challenges you're facing, what are the skills gaps, what do you want in terms of skills development, and can then help you signpost you to support that is available, whether it's funding, whether it's apprenticeships, whether it's FE or further education or higher education provision. So basically, it's an opportunity to sort of help you to identify what is the skill support you need, and then help provide the solutions for you. And we have a similar service for the large businesses as well, sort of an account management system, again, where we'll work with them around identifying the skills needs for them, developing training needs analysis, etc. You're probably familiar with apprenticeships. Not everybody is familiar with the apprenticeship family, so there are sort of three distinct apprenticeships now available in Scotland. So the foundation apprenticeships, which are for people in school to start their career journey, if you like, in a particular sector. Modern apprenticeships, which is the one probably most people are familiar with, and graduate apprenticeships. So foundation apprenticeships, as I say, they're for sort of S5, S6, senior phased pupils in school, based around a number of frameworks. It might be more than 12 now, but hospitality is one of those frameworks, and we're seeing more and more hospitality FAs, foundation apprentices, being delivered. They're delivered by colleges, local authorities, but other learning providers as well. And pupils learn the theory at a college or the training provider, but also spend time working with a local employer. So we're always looking for employers to get involved, setting projects and tasks for the young people to give them a real experience of work in the sector. And in hospitality, it's level SEQF, Scottish Qualification Scottish Council Qualification Framework, sorry, level 4 and 5 at that level. So that's the first level. Modern apprenticeships are a job where apprentices work, learn and earn. So they're employed by an employer, but they are trained through a training provider, and we provide the funding for that training. And there are over 80 types of MA, but that includes hospitality, a range of hospitality frameworks, including professional cookery, food and beverage service, management, supervisory management. So there's a range of MA frameworks, but also there are others as well, business management and so on, that businesses can decide what's the appropriate one for them. And a wide range of employers make use of those. I'm aware of time, so I'll skip on, Elsa. I don't want to eat into the rest of the meeting. A lot of benefits. I'm not going to go through those for businesses in being part of MAs. I know a lot of small businesses often feel they can't necessarily get involved in apprenticeships. It doesn't have to be a new member of staff. It can be an existing member of staff. So it can also be using an apprenticeship can be a way to upskill people already working with you. So it can be a way to take on somebody new and train them, but it can also be a way to upskill existing staff. And the feedback from employers is very, very positive in terms of satisfaction with the apprenticeship program, and benefits that you might not necessarily think of. Having an apprentice in a workplace can really boost the morale of other staff who really enjoy working with that apprentice and developing that apprentice. So a wide range of businesses, both for the apprentice but also for the business. And then finally, graduate apprenticeships. A lot of people aren't aware of graduate apprenticeships, but basically same as a modern apprenticeship, but to a degree level. So it's a way to get qualified up to a master's degree while working. So again, it can be somebody you take on in that sort of role, but it can also be a way to upskill somebody who's maybe worked in your business for quite a long time and want to progress and get a qualification at degree level, but not go to university full-time or part-time and get paid while they do it. So we're seeing more and more businesses in the hospitality tourism sector getting involved in this, particularly around business management. There isn't a hospitality specific framework at the moment, but business management can be tailored to the needs of a hotel or other tourism business. So you can get a degree in business management working in a hospitality environment. So other support available. There is an Adopt an Apprentice program. If you want to take on an apprentice who's been made redundant, you can, and get funding support to do that as well. Flexible Workforce Development Fund sometimes feels like one of the best kept secrets in the hospitality sector, but there is funding available for businesses to train their staff. It's currently, I think, people are registering interest, but it will be up and running hopefully very soon. And for small businesses, you can get up to £5,000 for a college or open university program, and now also a program delivered by private learning providers. So it's funding there to train and develop your staff. And for large companies who pay the apprenticeship levy, so that's large businesses of over 250 staff, you can get up to £15,000 for that as well. So well worth checking out the Flexible Workforce Development Fund and how you can maybe make use of that for funding to train your staff. There's also a free learning, online learning program called Future Learn, which has a wide range of online learning, which is very, quality checked, verified, comes with a qualification, but is free. So there is free online learning, and on the rise of online learning through COVID has been astronomical. More and more people realizing they can learn online, and that applies for people in the workplace as well as anyone else. We have individual training accounts for individual people who can access £200 if they want to access funding to train themselves, to upskill themselves. And there's now also a range of I talked about digital online training as well, that tourism businesses can tap into. So I think there's one in particular called the digital driving license. I think it's something along those lines, which is kind of for those people who perhaps really want to take their first steps in digital skills. So again, it's all free. Very quickly, Hospitality Rising. If you may be aware of this. This is a UK-wide recruitment campaign. So we were talking about the challenges of changing perceptions of the sector. So this is an online campaign. They're always looking for businesses to get involved, normally through a bit of funding. But it's very much targeted at young people. Social media campaign, but it's bringing in a lot of big name chefs and others as well. It's just been launched. So again, anything you can do to raise awareness of that, or to use resources that they're producing, be aware that that's there. I mentioned Age Scotland, and their website's worth looking at in terms of age inclusive support, and they're now providing tourism specific age inclusion support. Springboard I'll come back to very briefly. Hit Scotland, we worked with Hit Scotland earlier this year to deliver nearly 2,000 online management leadership programs. I don't know if anyone on the call took part in those, but really successful. And of course, Hit Scotland have a wide range of training, scholarships and other things worth looking at as well. And around Fair Work, the Hoteliers Charter, UK-wide, but very much attempting to support and encourage businesses to sign up to the charter, and provide support in terms of demonstrating how they're treating their staff well in the workplace and good practice. Similarly, there's a Fair Work toolkit produced by the Fair Work Convention to help businesses understand Fair Work, and realize most businesses, when they look at it, say, we're actually really, really good in terms of how we treat our staff, and we should celebrate that more and promote that more. Developing young workforce, really important link into schools for businesses that want to engage with schools, and I put a link there to DYW North Highlands, which I'm sure teaching granting to suck eggs, but also in terms of recruitment, Job Centre Plus, really important to work with. And I was going to show a video, but there was no time. But just be aware as well, we work with Scottish Tourism Alliance and other partners to produce a tourism hospitality staff induction toolkit. It's a bit of a mouthful. I just call it a workforce toolkit. And a lot of the stuff I've just talked about around training, recruitment, fair work, equality, we've put in one place for tourism businesses. And because we hear all the time business saying, I don't know where to go for information. So we try to, that sits on the Scottish Tourism Alliance website, and just be aware. It'd be great, have a look through it, and there may be things in there you weren't aware of, because I know I've talked a lot. I mentioned Springboard. I always mention Springboard. They do fantastic work across Scotland and in schools promoting the sector. They run Future Chef, which is a competition for school kids across most of the schools in Scotland. They have a website called CareerScope to promote the sector. You can advertise jobs on it. So I just thought I'd flag that up to you, as if you're not engaged with Springboard as a business, it's worth maybe checking them out and finding out a little bit more about what they do. That was the video. The video was we haven't got time, but you can click on it yourselves. We did some work with a Highland Hoteliers Association, it's a mouthful. Highland Hoteliers Association, formerly Inverness Hoteliers Association, around the labour shortage they faced. 222 vacancies across 12 hotels in Inverness and around that area. And it was a partnership approach between ourselves, Job Centre Plus, Springboard, DYW, and a local authority, and very successful. We got a lot of young people in particular applying for jobs who probably wouldn't have done otherwise. So there are examples of partnership working out there, which is really important. And I think Venture North's a good example of working together to address some of these issues. And I'll shut up there, Elsa. Sorry to take so long. I've taken far longer than I thought. Over to you.
No worries at all. Thank you very much for that, Lawrence. Yeah, and it was really interesting just to hear a bit more, and also very optimistic, I'd say, in the sort of support, and a lot of people keen to sort of show what hospitality and tourism is all about, and hopefully address some of those challenges as well. So no, very interesting. I'll just give, I had a short presentation, but I'll just, bearing in mind of time, I'll just give a brief sort of run through, just because I don't want to eat into too much of sort of the Q&A and discussion time. Just bear with me 2 seconds, sorry. That should be up for everyone now. Yeah, so just a bit on sort of what, on the backdrop of everything Lawrence has talked about, what sort of Venture North's role is within supporting careers in tourism and hospitality in Caithness and Sutherland. So in particular, we're supporting sort of regional and national skills agencies in the north. That's been just now, particularly DYW, and linking up with them, and sort of how we can go into schools and address sort of those misconceptions around tourism and hospitality that Lawrence touched on. And I really think that sort of schools is the best place to start with that, when people start thinking about what they can do afterwards and stuff. And then just get a bit of feedback from you guys at the end as we go into the discussion. So one of the things we've been doing is working on a bit of a careers campaign. So that's linking up with local businesses to really show who are the people working behind tourism and hospitality in the region. So I just screenshotted just 2 examples we had from Carlskew on the left and then Links House on the right. And these are building together sort of career toolkits, showing sort of, Lawrence touched on it as well, the different roles that there are in tourism and hospitality, and also where the different roles can take you, and how sort of one person's sort of career pathway has developed across different businesses and different roles in the sector. And I think related to that as well, it was showing the lifestyle of working in Caithness and Sutherland, which I'm sure a lot of people on the call will be quite passionate about. It is more than, it's also showing that doing this career in this particular region and the benefits behind that, and sort of the unique work-life balance going into hospitality in the North Highlands offers. So we've also put together with Links House, I'll just show just a little bit of it, just bearing in mind time, with the head chef at Links House. Again, just about his career pathway, benefits of living over in Dornoch. And yeah, I'll just play it for you. Can everyone hear that?
Didn't really know what I wanted to do, and she was like, why don't you give chefing a go? So I went and did an apprenticeship at the age of 25 when I was getting paid £3.60 an hour. So my wife very much supported me to do that. And yeah, I just kind of found a passion for it and a love for it. I think it was something I always enjoyed, even when I was like 10 years old. I remember I wanted to do like a Sunday roast for Mother's Day for my mum. So it was just one of them things. I was always watching her cook. It just took a long time for me to realise that was what I actually enjoyed doing. I had a few pub jobs where I was just finding my feet, kind of trying to see where I wanted to go with my career. I had one stint where I was at a place in Yorkshire in Harrogate called Rudding Park, and I was there for 6 years. And while I was there, I went from like conference and banqueting to a 2 rosette kitchen. Then I was in a 3 rosette kitchen pushing Michelin star, and I was there for 2.5 years in that particular kitchen. And that was when I went from a CDP to a sous chef. Kind of hit a ceiling at that job, so I left, went into a bit of pub work again, and then COVID hit, lost my job, everything else happened, had a little baby. Then my wife was like, I want to move up to Scotland because all my family live up in Scotland, so we moved up to Scotland, and I struggled to find work. And again, I just kind of got fortunate. I was playing with my little girl in her room, and Phil rang me out of the blue saying, oh, I got your CV, do you want to come for a job interview? And I came, I think it was about end of April last year, up to Link's house, and I've been here ever since. This is my first proper.
Just pause it there. But yeah, that's sort of just a brief taster about sort of the video. And we'll be sharing that with the likes of sort of UHI and DYW. So when they're sort of working in schools and colleges, to give sort of that background of what hospitality and tourism is all about. And we want to develop more of these going forward. So always open to if any you've got sort of staff within your business that would be a good sort of ambassador for a career in the industry, like always keen to hear about them and get involved as well. So another sort of part of that we've been doing is working with DYW to engage with local schools. So at the moment, it's particularly in the north, working with the DYW schools coordinators up there. So hoping to arrange some school visits in the new year, and very much in the beginning phase of this. So we're always keen again for any businesses who want to get involved, or if you've got any good ideas of how we can sort of make careers in tourism and hospitality engaging going into schools. So whether that's sort of inspirational talks, or we were talking about having demonstrations, linking up with home economics classes, getting kids involved in cooking and things like that. Work experience placements as well, and also going and linking up with UHI, the college, to show obviously the different further education courses as well. And relatedly as well, they've got their first steps into Highland hospitality, which I won't go into because I'm sure a lot of people on the call already know about that. But yeah, part of that is a 2-day business placement, and UHI are still keen to hear from other businesses that would like to get involved and sort of offer work placement to students. So that was just